Hello, my name is Leo, and welcome to the third tutorial in the Lighting Mastery series by Blau Films.
Hello, I'm Eric and I'm Director of Photography in Blau Films.
So in the previous two videos, we were looking at the Baroque era, and for this third tutorial, we decided to move a little bit more into the modern times, and we will be looking at Edward Hopper. And I believe, Eric, that's actually one of your favorites.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Hopper has been one of my favorites since I started in cinematography, and that's because he always had this quite cinematic quality into his style, into his paintings. You can even see a lot of the influence he has in directors such as David Lynch, David Fincher as well.
Yep, absolutely. So I guess we will just take the same approach as in the previous tutorials. We will first have a look at the references, and then we will just go light by light. Yeah, before that, I would just like to say thank you very much for watching this series. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the future content we will be making, with all the future lighting mastery tutorials. And yeah, let's get into it.
Excellent. Yeah, something we can see on this painting, we chose to recreate his most famous painting called the Nighthawks. So what I would like to start to analyze here is his colors. All of his colors are not very saturated. They're almost a bit washed out, going more to the green side of the spectrum of the wheel. And that's going to influence a lot on the light that we're going to use.
Everything in this painting feels very artificial in the light. It's not really giving me moonlight kind of vibe as we were discussing in the previous video. It's more of a it's almost as if this green hue is coming from the light that's inside.
Yeah, and as well it seems to be lit, at least on the outside, it's lit with street lamps. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because back in the days they used to have this quite of those old red lights.
Yep.
Sodium vapor, I think.
Yeah.
That's how they were called.
550 nanometers.
Yeah, precisely. And well, in his painting, this naturalistic jet stylized view on the way he places the lights and on the way he places his characters. He always manages to get this quite of a melancholic and I would say even sad.
A very distant look, right?
Yeah, very distant. And this painting feels quite voyeuristic.
It's also interesting to me how much you can see from the outside.
Yeah.
It's supposed to give this feeling of a like to me when I look at it, I go, okay, this is a nighttime shot. And maybe we're being biased by the title of the painting, but it's very bright for a nighttime environment.
It is. And as well, like the position he decided to use is like almost like this voyeuristic view.
Yes.
Right? None of them looking at camera, even just, facing the other way.
Yep.
And that creates a very interesting composition. Very interesting framing as well.
Yes, very true. We can notice in a few of the other paintings from Hopper that he loves to use these very harsh cuts in his light, as we can see, I guess, very clearly in this painting over here.
Yeah, Hopper somehow managed to create this quite naturalistic yet stylized vision. And that's something we're very curious to see how can we achieve that.
This was actually the most complicated of the three artists we've been working with up till now. There are many things that I guess you could call lighting inconsistencies or something. Like there's some of these things that just don't behave the way light works in real life.
Yes, it is. I think as well that this is one of the, because I mean like in the other tutorials we started just lighting objects. Then we went for a room, and now we are lighting both an whole interior and as well as street. And that was very interesting. I'm very excited.
Yep.
Very exciting to try to do this. But yeah, we did realize that there was some inconsistencies that we had to work around it.
Shall we get into it?
Let's start.
Let's go. All right, so we're back into Cinema 4D. I've got PureRef set up on the right over here with our Nighthawks painting, just to have it always there as a reference. And we have our interactive renderer running over here. As you can see, this is the look that we ended up having. This is still a non-color graded version of our final shot that we will show at the end of the video. And in our scene setup, you can see I have bundled all of our scene objects into one. We have our 75mm camera, and then we have the flags, the fusions inside of this folder, and the rest are the lights. So, Eric, what do you want to go through first?
Well, first of all, I would like you to show how does the actual render looks like
Yeah.
in space, because I think it's very interesting that you managed to recreate quite close.
Let's zoom out over here and let's look at the set. So it's really as much of a movie set as you could expect, right? It's just a bunch of facades. Nothing is really there except for what we're seeing on screen.
It reminds me, I think I mentioned this to you, but it reminds me to that movie. They recreate as well the whole Hopper's paintings. It's called Shirley Visions of Reality.
Yes.
And it's quite similar, the look you get from here and the look from the movie.
Okay, I think we did something right then.
So when I first saw this, I was very excited to start lighting it because it's a bigger space and it's so different to the other two tutorials.
Oh yes, absolutely. So as you can see, we have the Nighthawks Phillies Cafe right at the corner over here. And then we have a few shops that are just duplicates one of the other in a row. And then we have two major apartment complexes on the other side of the street. For those of you who are looking at the interactive renderer over here going crazy, you can already see some of the lighting setup that we have on the outside of the scene.
Okay, so the first thing that we were concentrating on was to get the right framing. I think that was the one that took us the most, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we spent like a full hour trying to get just the framing right. So if you look at where we have the camera placed, we've kind of placed it right outside of the boundaries of our scene. And we have a 75mm lens looking straight at the cafe. We are at a height of 2 meters and 20 centimeters, so a little bit above eye height, and we are tilting it down half a degree.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it was quite tempting to go for a wide angle, but it wasn't giving us the compression that we were looking for.
Yeah.
So we decided to go, we tried a 50, but the 75 was the best option.
We can compare it with the 50 over here. As you can see, you get to see much more of the street at the bottom, which was the one problem that we were having as Hopper's painting. The sidewalk basically fills the entire left corner of the screen.
Yeah, that's why we tried to switch for an 85, but we thought it was quite close and the 75 was the best option. Yep. Yeah, I want to go as well to the camera settings.
Yes.
So like we said, we have a 75mm. We have a ISO of 800 because it's usually the standard of nowadays cameras. We are on an f-stop of 11
Yep.
because we want to have that very nice clean focus all over the room.
Yep.
Yeah, and we finally have a white balance of 6500. Okay. Once that we managed to get the right framing, now we can go for the light.
Oh, perfect. Here you go. We're in complete darkness.
Okay, excellent. So now that we're happy with the position of the camera, then we can start adding some lights in there. So I just want to remind that we're trying to do the lighting as close as you would do it in reality. For all the 3D animators out there, it's going to work, but as well for cinematographers that want to start trying to make these exercises of lighting before you go to set, I think this is a good way to start. So the first thing that I want to do is to give an ambient light to the whole scene. So if you can see on the reference, the street is dark, but you're able to see the detail in it. So one thing I proposed to Leo was to create a grid of LED panels and just to lay them on top of the street. Yep. So if you can show them, how does that look?
Absolutely. So we created a grid of 2 meters by 50 centimeter LED panels, and they all are aimed downwards with a temperature of 5600, which is a bit warmer than what we have our camera set to. And we have a intensity of 500 watts. Let me just turn one on. You'll see
Yeah.
how much light that's giving you. And then I put that thing inside of a cloner. I give it one row in the height, so we have a flat, long grid, and then we have 5 wide and 9 into the distance. 9 rows into the distance, each with 5 panels. And if I turn that grid on, you can see right here in the top right window how many panels we have and how they are distanced from one to each other, and kind of giving them one empty space of a panel in between each one of them. At the bottom left in the interactive render, you can see how much light that's generating into the scene already. They are basically higher than the buildings, right?
Yep, yeah, they're higher than the buildings, and that's something you would do in reality as well. You would create like this big rig, and then you will just lay them all over, and then you'll be able to control them.
You've actually done that recently, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a smaller setup, but I found out that it's quite helpful to control everything, and it just, you don't have to worry a lot about lights anymore.
Yep.
Once that you have that.
Everything becomes one solid diffused light source.
Yes, precisely. Now, if we go back to the camera position,
Yep.
and here in the interactive render, we're gonna see that we're having quite a harsh light. It almost seems that it's an overcast day,
Yep.
but it doesn't look like if it was night.
No, not at all.
And something we need to do is to create that illusion. So the next step would do is to add a diffusion frame that covers the whole thing, the whole grid panels.
So to create a diffusion frame, basically I just created a large plane that's about 30 by 45 meters, about the size of our grids. And I added a material like this. So it's a material with everything turned off, and then the translucency setting set to a fraction of 95%. Basically meaning that the light will hit it, it will scatter a little bit around the surface, but most of it will still be let through. We cut out some intensity, I guess, and we lost some of that harsh light look.
Yeah, it's gonna give us like more diffuse shadows, and that resembles a little bit more of a night feeling.
So here you go. We have that frame about 2 to 3 meters away from the lights. And if you look at it from the bottom, you can see it just becomes a very big softbox.
Yeah, something to have in mind as well is that every time you add diffusion, you're cutting stops of light. And that's something we wanted to do. And here, right here in the viewport, you can see how everything just becomes more soft. The shadows are more gentle, and the intensity has been reduced.
Yes. So what's next?
If we can see on the painting here, you can see the difference of intensity of the sidewalk, of the street itself, and the wall of the building. And you can see that the wall of the building is a little bit darker, right? So what we did was to move the whole grid a little bit more to the right, so we don't have that much spill straight into that wall. And then we added a flat just on the left side of the grid to as well prevent that spill.
So it's basically, we're creating this 90-degree L shape over here with a flag completely covering that side of the building.
Yeah, with that, it's gonna prevent, we have a lot of spill in there, and then we can play with the values. I think I'm happy with the ambient light. I think it's giving the mood, the atmosphere, it has the right value, the right intensity. So I think we can move on to the inside the cafeteria.
Yeah, that's where the magic really starts happening.
Exactly. The cafeteria, at the end of the day, it's the main character of this painting. So before we start adding more lights to the outside, because we're missing a couple, let's start with the protagonist and let's give the intensity so we can start really getting in the mood.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I would like to do is to add, very similar to what we did outside, but of course in a smaller proportion, it's to add the ambient light that we're gonna use inside the cafeteria.
That inside of Corona Renderer or inside of your render engine is just going to be a square area light. This one is 660 by 415 centimeters. and we have placed it right at the ceiling of that room, right? Just behind the edge of the building. So you're not seeing it, but it's, if you just move the camera a centimeter, you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, that's correct. Like I've mentioned in the other tutorials, because I think we tried to use 2 3 lights in there.
Yeah.
But then we just came back to the same thing, right? Let's just use one single big source to light the space.
Always try to minimize the amount of lights you use. And there's always a way to think about it a bit more and figure out a way to do it with less.
Yes, precisely. And that's something that I've learned a lot. It's to try to light spaces instead of characters. And I think that's going to be much more easier for all of your upcoming projects. So right now, yes, we have that nice ambient light. We're able to see inside, but we can see that there are some spots here that are quite bright, and we have something else that is a huge reflection, because of course now we're able to see everything inside.
Yeah.
If we go to the painting, it almost seems that this cafeteria doesn't have windows.
That's the beauty of Hopper, right? The invisible windows.
Because he's giving us like this inside perspective of if you were a voyeurist, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting. What I would do in reality to be able to cancel all that reflection, it's something called a negative fill. And the negative fill is basically just a big black cloth that you will just put, just like if it was like a huge flag, and then you will cover all that in darkness, and that's a way to reduce the reflections or to kill it completely.
To clarify to the audience as well, is think about it like this. A reflection comes from the area that has a brighter exposure than your other area. So if we have outside being A and inside being B, as long as B is brighter than A, you will always be getting a reflection on the window.
That's correct.
I didn't actually think of this technique at all. I was very surprised when Eric told me this during our test. If you literally just slap a massive negative fill to the back wall of that building, now you've suddenly created the illusion that your exposure inside is darker than outside, and you get rid of your reflection. We have literally just a massive black drape over there, and we actually put a second one a little bit to the side over there as well.
Yeah, because we were able to see both of the back walls.
If we're back into the viewport, yeah, there you go. Reflection's gone. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Now, we were thinking as well, and we were debating a lot whether if we should eliminate completely the reflection or not. But I think as well it gives a nice depth. It makes it more three-dimensional. And because we're thinking here in cinematography terms, I think we decided to leave those on.
We were even thinking of rendering out like a little push-in into the reflection of these people.
Yeah, that'll be a very interesting shot.
Now, what's funny as well to mention is, if you had a keen eye a second ago, you would have seen that the window to the right of our people didn't actually have a reflection of the back wall. The reason for that is because we actually decided to create a second material for that window that has no reflection. And Eric, is that cheating?
Well, maybe. I think as well, like, a good cinematography always comes in hand with a good production design. And it's very important that you collaborate with your production designer. And there's sometimes, like, let's say you want to be able to have that reflection, but not all over the place. And you can always talk to the production designer and ask them for a non-reflective window, which is a real thing. So now that you're making these kind of exercises and experiments, now you'll know that you're probably gonna face that problem, and that's something worth to speak about to the production.
What else do we have? Because the other thing we have is a massive bright spot on the right, but we're still not completely done with the lights that we have inside.
Not yet, but first of all, I would like to have that expo of that one light. Like I said, craft it as much as you can, work with that single light and see how much can you do.
Yep.
Okay, so right now I wouldn't reduce the intensity for the sake of just getting rid of that overexposed corner, because I'm liking the spill that it's giving to the street. So what I would do is, how about if we just place one flag on top of that to be able just to reduce that overexposed corner we have there.
So we added a 4x4 black flag right underneath the characters and the coffee machines.
There you go. So that flag is gonna help us prevent to have that overexposed. Because I mean, like the overall exposure of the cafe is well done, is well achieved, but the problem is just the kind of material of those two coffee machines right there is quite reflective. As well, the clothing of the guy is quite bright, and we even had to lower a little bit the intensity of his clothes.
Yes, yeah, we changed this shirt.
That's as well really important. Not ever, or try not to work with completely white clothing. Try always to get a little bit of gray into the whites, so you won't have the overexposure problem. We left as well a bit of light in the corners, just to be able to have as well that spill in the walls, so we're not covering that, which is important. And yeah, let's get back to the camera position.
So exposure-wise, we've now kind of fixed the coffee machines and the barista, but we are immediately introducing a shitload of darkness underneath that character.
Yes, that's right. If we go back to the painting, to the reference, we can see that you're able to see everything, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot hidden in darkness, and even the dark areas have detail. Something I want to do is to add an LED tube light to each of those parts that are underexposed. So how about if we start first with the table?
The front of the table, which is very dark right now.
It is. So how about if you place an LED tube down there?
So we have this 3 centimeter radius, so a 6 centimeter thick LED tube with a pretty low intensity of 50 and a color temperature of 5600. We are matching the color temperature of all these lights, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we are.
And we have placed it right at the bottom. Let me first show you where it is positioned. So there it is. It's just a flat, laying horizontal LED tube shining right underneath these bar stools. Something very simple to achieve as well in real life. I guess you would just get some Astera tubes.
Yep, yeah, just any Astera tube, a quasar, just anything that it's a soft lighting LED tube. Very easy to hide, you don't need power, and you just place it and off you go.
Just lay it there, perfect. It basically just brings life to that bar.
Okay, nice. We can see now that we are able to see the front side of the table, which is something we were missing. But something as well that we're having, of course, because the barista is facing down, his position is not letting any light go through. So I would say let's replicate the same thing we did on the front, but now let's do it on the inside of the table.
Yes. So we have duplicated exactly the same LED tube, and we have just decreased the length to make sure that it's a shorter one. And we just put it down there at the bottom of the table, a little bit to the middle of the section. Imagine as if you would put it on top of a box. It's at about 60 centimeters of height. Cool, so what's next? We have, I can see that we have one more LED tube for inside.
Yeah, something that caught our attention was that, of course, we put a huge flag in there to reduce the intensity and to get rid of the overexposed areas. But that corner right there is quite dark. So something we did is to add another LED tube horizontally on top, just to shine that corner.
Yep. There you go. We've kind of just, as you can see on the top and bottom viewport, we've kind of just positioned it floating inside of the space. Now, this is something that in CG, you're able to hide these lights from the camera much easier. In real life, you would probably just have to. What would you have to do there?
Yeah, you can do that. But for example, I've been working on a film before the lockdown started, and some of the things I was looking is the collaboration that they have, the camera department and the VFX department. If you have the time and you're able to record empty plates after you shoot the scene, then I think it's quite easy to have some lights in frame, not in a very complicated position, and then you can erase them in post-production.
Very true. It's pretty common nowadays in visual effects heavy shoots to position lights in impossible places and just get rid of them in post.
That's the case if you have, like, let's say, a proper budget to be able to pay for a VFX team to do it. If you don't have that, then you'll have to get a little bit more creative on how you work your way around it. So, I mean, right now we decided to keep this, but another way you can do is to lay another LED tube flat on the floor and then just shine it through.
Eric, are you able to tell the audience what it is you're working on, or is that still going to be a secret for a while?
It's going to remain a secret for a while, but the moment I have clearance, I'll be able to share it with you.
Guys, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to know more about what it is that Eric is working on.
Excellent. So I think I'm very happy now with the look that we achieved inside the cafeteria.
Then let's see. Wow, we're actually going through this pretty quickly. It's funny how we spent about 5.5 hours a few days ago trying to understand and trying to grind our way through the hopper lighting. But once you manage to boil it down into what it actually is, as always, it's very simple and you can do it with 6 or 7 lights.
Yeah, exactly. And I think right now so far we managed to get the right exposure and the right level of contrast.
It's good to once in a while do an actual full render. Give it like 30 passes and give it a good resolution and just render it at, I don't know, 32 bits or something like that. It's good to be able to make some proper judgment calls on how your exposure is, how your colors are, or even how your materials are.
Yeah, that's something that we always do. We always try to give it a rest as well, and wait for a day to have a full render, and then see if we are actually nailing it and see things in much more detail.
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. I am right now happy with the cafeteria, with the inside. I am happy how we're getting a balance of the street and we're getting a balance on the inside of the cafeteria when it comes to light intensity. But I do feel that it now feels like night. I would like to go back to the exterior. Now, the reason I wanted to start with the cafeteria before finishing the exterior is that the other light that we're missing outside, it's, I don't know if you can see in the painting, you have that kind of a cut. And it's supposed to be emulating the spill of the light that's coming from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure to first lock the exposure and know that I was on the right intensity. So then I can work with that cut and then I can balance that out. Otherwise, if I would have started with that, it would have been quite difficult to know what was the right intensity for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It took us almost like an hour to figure out
Yeah.
where was the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
position of the light.
It's a little bit of a complicated one, but let's try to get through it. So we created a 500 watt, 50% directional spotlight. So in the previous tutorials, we've been talking a lot about if you want to know where you're shining your light, put the directionality to 100, meaning spot it 100%. And we have positioned this light very high up, just underneath where our diffusion frame starts. And we are aiming it downwards. And in the interactive renderer, you can see here where we are aiming that light. We're spotting it right at the second window of the apartment building. Then afterwards, we just lowered the directionality to 50, flooding it halfway. How would you, because for me still, it's very difficult to be able to imagine where to position flags to be able to get a desired effect.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we first had to nail was the position of the light. So if you can go back to the camera position so
Yep.
I can explain myself better. One of the things I was the most worried about was to be able to create that natural cut you see in the wall. If you turn off the new light that you added, we were able to see that the skylight that we have, the grid, was already creating that cut naturally. So if you see it on the viewport, so now if you see, you have that same cut, but in a much more softer version. So that was one of the clues we have in the beginning, right? Because we tried different positions and it wasn't really working. Naturally, we were getting that kind of fall off in the light. So what we wanted to do is, okay, let's try to recreate that same light, but now it has to be harsher just to create that very defined line in there. And that's the first cut I wanted to create out of the three.
So if I turn that on, it's not that much stronger, right? It just gives a little bit of an intensity boost.
It gives an intensity boost, but it's much more defined right now.
We have actually been going back and forth quite a lot about the intensity of this light because I remember when we first added the light, Eric was saying like, don't want to distract the audience to first be looking at that sharp geometric shape on that building.
Yeah, that's right. And as well, it has to feel natural, even though it's quite an unrealistic light, the way it's making the cut and everything. Um, you really want to make it feel that that is coming from the cafeteria. So that's why it was so important to first start with the lighting of the cafeteria before going to that light.
Yep. So now the light is turned on, and I guess we can start adding some flags, right?
What we decided to do was to start with the top cut, because it's a bit of an angle, and that's something we wanted to start working out with. What I asked Leo to do was to turn off the skylight, just to be able to see what's our light doing, and then you can see now on the viewport that we just have like everything is just spotted there,
Yep.
with no shape. So now if you can see, it's just cutting all the way half the building horizontally.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a bit of on an angle, but we wanted to really try to nail the same height and to cut right in the same level of the window.
Yep.
That was a complicated one, the height, the distance, in order to have that defined shadow.
To get a defined shadow, you need to have the flag pretty close to the subject that you want to be cutting, as opposed to having it closer to the light, because then the light will just start spilling again, unless you're like super spotted. But in this case,
another way to get away with that is to have a very intense light. But given that we're trying to emulate the spill of inside the cafeteria, going for a more intense light wouldn't be the option.
yep.
So that was like the difficult cut. The other cut is much more simpler because it's just going straight down.
And we actually placed it in front of the other one. Like, I guess this wouldn't really matter too much in real life, except for just like maybe it's easier to position them like this.
Yep, yeah, it is. It is. I wasn't that worried about that flag because the shape, it gets lost inside the shop.
Yeah, you can already see how defined that shadow is there.
Yeah. Yeah, now we have that cut that we wanted to achieve from inside the cafeteria on the wall. We have the top one and then we have the left one. Like if with the skylights off, it does feel that that is the spill coming from the cafe. Now, if you can turn on again the skylight, it does feel natural and it's working well in relation to the skylight. I think I'm quite happy with this. Lastly, something that we notice is that the Phillies sign on top, it's a bit dark. We finish up by adding one final light shining just straight to that Phillies.
So we have a very, very weak light, actually, just a 10 watt.
Having a flooded light, because you don't want to have it like very spotted, otherwise you're going to have a circle.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is to as well create the illusion. It's the spill of the cafeteria that is shining onto the top of that sign.
As you can see here, our 10 watt light is almost like a very elongated area light. Yeah, we're just kind of cutting it from the bottom, trying to exclude all the light hitting the green bar right underneath the Philly sign. Oh, we actually have a flag underneath the last row here.
Oh, so then we did use it.
We did use it. We just moved the whole thing to the next row.
Yeah. I think we were having problems with the spill that I was mentioning in the beginning.
Yes.
We had some problems there, and yeah, we just literally needed to cancel that row.
And that's it, man. That's it. We went through all the lights.
Yeah. Something that we were worried in the beginning was that Hopper's painting has a bit of a green tone over all the image.
Yeah.
And we were thinking, well, how can we achieve that? What's a realistic way to do that? And we started playing with the color temperature of the lights, and we even added a bit of green in the lights and stuff, but it wasn't quite working. And then we realized that the way to go around that is to actually work with the production design.
Yeah.
Work with the right colors.
Absolutely, because as you can see in our materials, I won't do too much of a material breakdown. Inside of the stone tile material, I put a layer node in between, and I just use this cyan mint color set to a color blending mode over here. And we are literally just making sure that we have these greenish tones in the natural materials in the environment.
That's correct. And that's why these previews are so important, because now with this, you not only have a reference for the lighting, but you have a reference of the geography and the colors. you want to use, and then you're able to take it to production design and start talking to them, and this is the right hue.
The one final thing that I did is I created a volume material with a 55,000 centimeter distance, a absorption color of 50% gray, and a scattering color of some kind of a blue haze, because I was looking through this window over here and it feels a little bit foggy or a little bit misty there. And on the one hand, you could attribute that to just being the texture of the paintbrush, but for the sake of trying to get a look similar to that, I created this volume material, and inside of the Corona renderer into the scene environment, I checked global volume and I put that material inside of this volume tab over here. It's very subtle, it almost doesn't really make a difference, but it just gives a little bit of a more hazy look to the entire scene. Well, I'm very happy with the way that we got this to work. It was very challenging. It was definitely more complicated than the two tutorials we did before, but I'm very happy with what we got in the end.
Yeah, me too, and yeah, I'm very excited to see what's the next painter.
Oh man, me too. I feel like we're gonna stay a little bit in this more modern time period before we make a switch to either back to the past or super modern. Like, because at some point we're gonna be doing some contemporary art, man.
Yeah, yeah, and I think as well that it's worth trying to experiment now with how light and architecture works together, because this was quite an architecture-based recreation.
Yep. Now, before we get out of here, a few more things that I want to talk to you guys about. First of all, look at our YouTube channel. That thing is growing. So we have 577 subscribers right now. Thank you very much. It's crazy to think about it, that 577 people in this world are actually getting some value from these videos.
Yeah, I'm very happy everyone's liking them. The response has been great so far, and if you have like any suggestions, any comments, please let us know.
Please leave a comment below. We're always reading them, and I get a push message on my phone when I get a comment, so I'm pretty quick to reply. And yeah, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like this video, comment, and check out the other tutorials we have on this page. I feel like this is the last video we will be doing for the end of this year, at least on my side.
Yes, same thing.
Perfect. Then I guess I hope you all have a amazing end of the year. Happy New Year. Stay safe. Don't do crazy stuff. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys in the next year. We'll talk to you in 2021. Yo, laters. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.